Hola, doncs avui tanquem
Hello. Today we are closing this Saturday with the gift of having Richard Price with us. Big round of applause for him.
Demà comencem a les 10.
Tomorrow we'll be starting at 10. Some housekeeping issues. Before the screening, you have to return your headsets. Please give them back and get your IDs back. It will be more difficult after the screening. After Richard Price's talk, we will have the screening of Perdita Durango, which is a film by Alex de la Iglesia inspired in a Barry Gifford novel. Barry Gifford, the publishing house Dirty Woods, has published the Seguelula saga over the years, and we tried to bring him here, and he was a bit like Tom Cruise with specialists. When they tell him it's impossible, he switches to another specialist. So his doctor told him he didn't recommend travel. He tried because he wanted to come, but no doctors of the ones he consulted said anything different, so he wasn't able to make it because of, it was precaution more than anything else. So I'll leave you here with Sergio Lozano. He's a friend of the festival, and he's a person who knows the world of crime literature perfectly well, and Richard Price's work. I just wanted to say that we are so proud to have him here today, and when you see the books, when you see his presence in films and shows, well, you realize that none of us would read the same, would watch fiction the same without the work of Richard Price. And for all of those reasons, I think it is an absolute pleasure to have him here with us.
So, hello, Richard.
Hola.
Welcome. Hola. Hello.
That's all I know.
Okay. Let me say just a few words, just 1 minute. I'll come back to you.
Sure.
Okay. Bona nit, buenas noches.
Good evening. He's an author that needs no introductions, but I will make a very brief introduction just to give you some context and to speak highly of his novels, which are extraordinary because, of course, he also complains about the Wire phenomenon. It's the best show of all times, but it has left the rest of his work in the dark, like cast a shadow over it. And we have to also remember his narrative work. He already talked about race, social class, drugs on the streets of New York when no one did. Now it's a common topic, but when he started, well, he's a pioneer in that. And I think he portrays human beings above being a crime writer, but he also touches the genre in a tangential but wonderful manner. He teaches us lessons on drug trafficking, what caliber leads to the most deaths, the nightmares of homicide detectives, etc. He was born in a very humble family in the Bronx, but he didn't become an archivist or a bus driver, and he honed his craft to detect, to take the temperature of the city. He observes and listens. He very humbly says this is his method, but he listens, pays attention, and observes. He says that's all he does. And Philip Kaufman adapted his first book to the cinema, The Wanderers, and then Spike Lee his masterwork, Clockers. Scorsese then commissioned to him the script of The Color of Money, and also he wrote a narrative for Michael Jackson's video clip. And he's worked for money. He acknowledges that in standard or low quality product, Shaft, Mercy of Love, etc. But his novels took a different path. They were more ambitious, more technical, wiser. We have Freedom Land, Samaritan, Lush Life, The Whites, and now Lazarus Man, another masterpiece. And let's not forget that The Wire, which is the best thing that has happened to TV for many of us, But there's also Clockers that was shot by Spike Lee. And then David Simmons, showrunner, broadened it and took it to many other places, but always with Price by his side, being a key figure in the writer's room. I wanted to speak of his novels, which are choral novels, always with redemption as a recurrent topic. We see it in Lazarus Man. At the core, we see a man who wants to believe in something to be able to move forward. A person who needs to believe in something, as many of us do. His novels are amazing, and when I read them, I have this feeling of authenticity, like the author has really walked the streets he writes about and has met the characters. We're not in a film. And authors like Richard Price make this more than consolidated festival even greater. After this brief introduction,
Okay, let's start with, lo haré en inglés, lo digo por si alguien necesita.
I'll do it in English in case someone needs to get their headsets on.
Talk a bit about your biography, a few questions, okay? I've read that your grandfather wrote poetry, yeah? Was he who discovered you the magic that could be done with words, on the one hand? And do you think that the most important factor in finding your voice was living in the Bronx housing projects in the 50s, in a very working class atmosphere? So your grandfather and the Bronx.
Well, my grandfather was a factory worker. He emigrated from Odessa, but he liked to read, and he wrote poetry that I saw when I was maybe 9 years old, 8 years old. It was published in a neighborhood magazine that was put together with Staples, and maybe had a circulation of, I don't know, 30 copies if they had enough paper. And I mean, now I look back, his poetry was really bad. But at the time, what it moved me was the fact that my father revered his father because he thought he was, because of the writing. And I looked at my father and I said, I want some of that. You know, so I basically, my grandfather inspired me because I saw my father's reaction, and I felt hungry for that. But just because you want to write, that doesn't mean you can write. And so I think I was admiring, I was so young and immature, I think I was admiring the gift wrapping more than any gift that was inside. Mm-hmm. But, you know, as life went on. In terms of the projects, I mean, when you're living, wherever you're living, at whatever age you're living, teenagers or pre-teenagers, pre-college, you're just living. It's your life. You don't think you're writing a book. You're just breathing. And I found that to leave is when you look back. You can't, if I stayed in the Bronx, I don't think I ever would have written a word. I had to just, you know, feel homesick, even though I really didn't want to go back there. And when I felt that yearning to capture something that I knew was going to be gone, I think that was the first time I ever felt like I had something to write about. Before that, it was just basically parlor tricks and, you know, superficial crap, you know, hippie stuff. But once that, if you don't have a subject, you can write till the cows come home. All you have is words. So I found my subject. I was about 20, 22, 21.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now it has come to my mind that I did an interview with you previously, long ago, and you told me that as a teacher of creative writing, the most important for you was to make your students, help them find their subject. No? That's the most important thing for a writer, you say, to find what you have to know, what's inside you and what you have to talk about. Yeah? Right.
Well, the challenge is why should I read you? What do you have to say to me that's going to bring me to a place that I've never been? And it's arbitrary. I mean, there's the old saying, write about what you know. And when I was teaching in my late 20s, you know, I had 18-year-old students, and they kept writing in the spirit of what they watched on television, but they had no connection to the material, and it was lousy. And I said, well, what do you know? write about where are you in life? What were your parents like? Did you love your father? Did you hate your father? Did you want to get out of there? Did you want to stay there forever? Write about something that's real to you. And they did. And because they got wrapped up in wanting to communicate where they were coming from, the writing got better because they were less self-conscious about, being fancy. So I got all these students, basically from New York and Long Island, middle class, and they were writing much better stories about where they're from. The next year, when I leave the school, another novelist took over my place, John Gardner, and he had the same students 1 year later, and they started handing in their work like they did to me, and he says, "What is this stuff?" And they said, "Well, Professor Price said, write about what you know." Who cares what you know? You're 18 years old. You don't know anything. Make shit up. Come on, just it's called creative writing, not tape recording. So, that's why they have horse races. So.
Okay. And you were supposed to study law. That was the idea, or at least for your family. But literature came in the way. What happened there?
Well, listen, my parents were born in the 20s. And they grew up their parents were haunted by the Depression. So, and they were working class people. And so when you have a son or a daughter who finally makes it to a college, the whole point of going to school is to come out with a job, to get economic security. And to say you want to be a writer, so what? What do you mean? You're going to drive a taxi and recite poetry? Especially in college, all my friends, well, this one's going to business school, this one's going to be a lawyer, this one's going to be, a chief executive somewhere, this guy's going to medical school, and you're like Harry Chapin riding in my taxi, And, but I hung in despite everything, and I remember my father had a little store that sold hosiery. I remember in the store, can I go? No, but I'm not being responsible. In fact, he got so sick of it. He said, "Okay, stop, go to your stupid writing school for 2 years. If it doesn't work out, then you go to law school." Instead of saying, "Yes, this is my destiny," I said, "Gee, thanks, Dad." Because I grew up in that environment that felt like it was frivolous.
Mm-hmm. Good. And I think we could agree that you're not a pure crime fiction writer, but since the start, your novels have touched, or many of your novels have touched topics close to the genre. What drew you to it, or how did that attraction take place?
Well, I discovered. I first did what they call ride-alongs, like you get permission to sit in the back of a squad car or an unmarked detective's car, because I was doing research for an Al Pacino movie that I wrote, Sea of Love. And I don't like or dislike cops. Cops are like people almost, and it was more what you see when you're with people whose job it is to engage in the most extreme human behavior. And I mean, it's like, I always compare it to, here's the city, but it's like an ocean, and you're standing on the shore, and all you see is the surface of the water. Maybe some porpoise or something, jumps up and goes down, or maybe a gull comes down and grabs something, and that's all you see. When you're with police, it's like you go in the water and you have a scuba mask on, and you see all the stuff of human extremists that was impossible to see from the shore. And once you see that, for me, it was addicting, because I would never in my life, how could I write about the city if I didn't understand that New York City or any city, there's a tectonic plate, there's an earthquake fault line, but you don't know that. But when you're with the police, you see the fault line beneath, and you get an idea of all the tensions. and all the passions. And it's not just about crime, it's about witnessing human beings doing things that I'm a student of the city. I'll never not be a student of the city. And once I started running around with the police in various cities, that's one side of it. I mean, there's the police, and then there's the policed. And then there's the people in the middle who are just trying to make it through the day. And what you want to do is you don't want to stay on one side. You want to hear everybody's story. And you want a panorama. Listen, Jane Austen never left her village, and she's a better writer than I am, so what can I tell you? But for me, I just wanted to capture it. I mean, if I was raised to be a street photographer, I'd be in bliss. But my camera is my page.
Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me, I think it was for the Lush Life, La Vida Fácil in Spanish, that you went with the night watch. Night watch was for the Lush
Night
Life,
watch,
no?
yeah.
The night shift, and you had a wonderful time. I wonder how
It was like a wonderful time. You go there because shit happens.
It was exciting, at least, no? It was really exciting.
Well, it was interesting.
Adrenaline, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. But how do you gain the confidence of the cops?
Well, how do you get? Well, first of all, to get people to talk to you, nobody. I'm coming to. Oops! Did I just come out of? I just heard my voice.
No, I think it's
okay.
Yeah.
How many people in your entire lives, somebody comes up to them and says, "I'd like to know about you. I'd like to know how you think. Nobody gets asked about themselves. And, unless they're, for whatever reason, paranoid or they just don't like your face, they might. But most people, it's a new experience. Somebody wants to know about me. And I find that to approach somebody, once you got them talking to you, it's like, you have to be good company. You have to be somebody that they enjoy talking to. So it's okay. You tell me about this, and I'll tell you about this in my life. And so it's not like interviewing people so much as getting allowed to walk in their shoes, to sort of go around with them for a day, a week, a month, an hour, and I don't have questions. Because I don't know what questions to ask, but once I hang out with them for a while, at least the next time, now I have a few questions given what I've seen. But it's not even about that. It's everything, all the epiphanies come from non sequiturs. Some random thing somebody says that they don't realize is like a little chip of a molecule that's going to recreate, metastasize, and bring up a whole world. You see stuff. Somebody says something out of the side of their mouth, which is their point of view of what you've been seeing, and it's like a door opens. It's the little things. The cliche is don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but I believe in the nuggets, mm-hmm. and it's like deep sea fishing.
Mm-hmm. As I was saying in the introduction, linked to this, reading your books, I have this feeling that, for lack of a better word, of authenticity, no? Unlike other authors, who take a lot of licenses in order to like or to just entertain. I see an effort in your books in order to be honest to facts or to people, to get to the heart of things. Because maybe that's why you're a very patient writer. It takes you long because you want to get to know people and do things the right way.
Yeah, I want to understand this book, 18 years, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to write about Harlem, which I had just moved to, but you can't write about a place if you don't know it unless you're a travel guide. Then you look it up and you say, oh, on your left is a church, on your right is the library, on behind you is a housing development. And I had to be someplace where all the things that I found astonishing are ordinary. That, Andre Gide once said, if you're going to write about, I think he was referring to Africa, but he said, if you're going to write about Africa, either go there for 10 days or 10 years. So, get your first impressions. But there would be no depth for me if I did that. I'd just get by in my glibness. And so I decided, well, if you're going to write, you better live there until you see things. Still, I'm repeating myself, but until the astonishing, that becomes the ordinary, but it loses its like dazzlement, and you're able to see nuances that you're absolutely unable to see after a month of living there because you were just experientially blind.
Mm-hmm. And your starting point for the novel changes, or usually comes from the same sources, from a character or a subject or an image, a piece of news, or it depends on the book? Every book has its trigger.
It depends on the book. I mean, sometimes it's a place that starts the book. Lush Life was about a certain section of New York City that was historically, turn of the 20th century, was packed with immigrants from Eastern Europe, mostly Jewish, and evolved into, because real estate wants what it wants, and it developed now into sort of like a suburban kid pretending he's a bohemian place to hang out, and Lazarus Man, like I said, I wanted to write about Harlem, but I was writing on, but out of the side of my mouth for a couple of years, and then there was an event that happened that triggered. Sometimes you know the area, but you don't know your story. It's like you're in a district, and after a little while, you're on a certain set of streets, and until you have the address of the house, that's when I write. And it happened, there was a building collapse about 10 blocks from my house in 2014, I think. And it was a 6-story tenement building. And it was just old, and there was a gas leak, and the house, boom, it just pancaked. And I heard it. It was like, I could feel it in my jawbone. And I went down there, 10 blocks, and I saw this thing, but even then, and this collapse became the center of my story. But even after that, it took me a year to realize, I think I'm going to use that, because you get rapture of the deep. You're thinking it should be this, and then when something happens, or you go, aha! Now I have the thing. Now I have the horse that I can ride through this very complicated landscape and pull everybody in.
Mm-hmm. And almost all the main characters in Lazarus Man are trying to find a way or path in life. They're a bit lost. They have suffered. They have maybe a bit lost, as I say, but they want to change or do better. It's a subject that has crossed your work. No? I don't know if the idea of fall and redemption describes it precisely, but what makes it so interesting for you and rewarding, Richard?
Well, people ask me questions like, is the collapse of the building a metaphorical collapse of society? And no, it was a collapse of a building. Sometimes, even Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a good smoke. I'm a realist, social realist writer, even though I think social realism is too, serious and wants to prove a point. So I try to mix up social realism with some kind of jazz rhythm in the prose, which I learned from the beats. But anyways, what was the question?
It's the subject of redemption, no? That's a big thing for you.
No. I didn't think so much about redemption. I mean, obviously, somebody who was supposed to, there's no life in this rubble. The cadaver dogs have been through the area. We have sophisticated detectors that can pick up, breathing. All of a sudden, 3 days later, somebody rises from the ashes. And it's questionable how we got there. And he's somebody whose life is just, somebody took a pin to the balloon, that was his life. He's in his 40s, he's sober from cocaine. His marriage failed. He started out with high hopes as a student at an Ivy League college. He got caught dealing drugs, and now he's in his 40s, and he works in a men's clothing store. So his whole life is falling apart. But when he rises, it's like a miracle to people, and people start treating him for the first time in a long time. He makes people smile. They're glad to see him, and he becomes a different person because he's loved. And whether he was really buried or not, that's one thing. But the other thing is that his gratitude for being related to by all the people makes his heart expands, and he feels joy. He feels reborn. It's hard to say that's not a metaphor, but he's Lazarus, and he becomes an inspiration to people, and they start inviting him to give talks. He goes on a talk show, and he just talks about gratitude, to be alive, what it is to be alive, and just live until you die. And no matter what tragedy befalls you, something good will come out of it. And he's just saying these things, and some of them are trite, and some of them are, I wouldn't call them profound, but they're inspirational to a lot of people. And the more he gets known, the more he's worried about somebody uncovering the fact that he might or might not have been buried in there. So there's an old saying, if you have a tiger by the tail, do you have the tiger or does the tiger have you? And so it's all this acclaim that's coming out of sincerity in him, yet there's that other part that he might be exposed. And on one day, he decides it's God's will that I was recovered. And another day, oh, what a bunch of crap. You know what happened. Listen, am I?
Yeah, yes, okay.
I keep hearing my own voice without magnification in my head. Oh, I have demons. Yeah, kill that Coca-Cola can. The thing about I like being invited to like a noir crimey thing, but I struggle with being regarded as a crime writer because, the people that I write about are what I want to write about, and sometimes it's just easiest for me to have seen what I've seen and learned what I've learned. And like I said, sometimes it's the convenience of the orderliness of a criminal investigation. It's chronological. There are straight steps that you follow. You pull in witnesses, you pull in victims, you pull in the perpetrator, you have the families of people, you have somebody that's been walking on the street and had no relation to anything. And it helps you just bring everything. I say it's like, sometimes an investigation is the magnet, and everything around that world is magnetic filings that get pulled in. And thank you for that. Now I can write.
Mm-hmm. And your characters are hugely defined by the way they talk. Is finding their voice, their tone, a key factor to flesh them out, and make them believable to the reader? You have to find their voice, the way they...
Yeah, well, like voices are like fingerprints. And what dialogue does for me, is it tells you by how they put together words in a conversation that reveals how they see the world that they don't even know about. And I just have an ear for I just love listening to people talk, and but it's, like a tape recorder can give you good dialogue. I mean, but the fact of the matter is human speech is, if you record something, like for example, the CIA, I'm not the CIA, the FBI put a bug, like a hidden microscope in a mafia coffee house, because they wanted to pick up confessions or mentions of crimes about to be committed, had been committed. And when you listen to those tapes, it's like Andy Warhol. It's like, the guy, hey, can I get a coffee? And it's like the FBI agents must have gone into a coma, because you're listening to how people speak, and it's elliptical, it's chaotic, it's nonsensical. It's something that's vaguely interesting, but only for about 4 words. So the trick with dialogue for me is, is the artifice of how people speak. I'm trying to compress all that sort of chaos to a point of coherence. You take out a lot of those dots, but dialogue is character for me.
Mm-hmm. So the best dialogue would be that at the same time portrays the character, defines the character, but also pushes the narrative forward. That's sort of dialogue. Yep.
Yeah, well, and in a way, I mean, hopefully it better push the story forward. Everything should, but
mm-hmm.
I just love dialogue. If I could do without English or any sentence structure and just write dialogue, I would. Mm-hmm. But then I'd have to be a playwright.
Mm-hmm. One more thing about style. Your work has always been had always a lot of lyricism, poetic,
mm-hmm.
but also a kind of electricity. I wonder if there's any music genre you somewhere aspire to get close to with your writing. It has this rhythm, no? This musicality.
Well, what happened? The evolution was like this. When I went to public school in the Bronx, the New York City public school system, once again...
Ascolteu bé? Yes.
Okay. All right, don't listen to me. I'll tell you where to listen to me. Now, yes, now, yes. Good evil, bad evil. Good angel, bad devil. You should see me in my hotel room later. When I have a shot of vodka.
Excuse me, maybe you don't need this one, no? No?
Oh,
no, because that's only to listen to my Spanish words.
Oh, no wonder I can hear myself.
Now, yeah, okay.
Oh,
yes.
Damn you, second.
Okay, now we figured out.
Okay, so
yes.
when I wanted to be a writer, and I was young, and basically I wanted to be a writer because every young pre-adolescent and adolescent wants to have something that makes them feel like they're special. Like, this guy's the best dancer. This girl has the best hair. This guy's the math brain. You want to have one thing attached to you. So my thing is, I'm going to be the writer. But I was reading all the classics that, obviously they're world classics. But if I'm reading Oedipus, if I'm reading Shakespeare, if I'm reading one of the Brontes, if I'm reading Dickens, if I'm reading whoever, Mark Twain, none of these people remind me of me. None of these people, people read in part to recognize themselves or to see something that tells them who they are, even though they didn't really realize that's who they are until they read it. And I never had that sense of self-recognition, and it was intimidating. And I always say, I thought, well, you have to be a dead Englishman to publish a book. And then I read books that took place in New York City, in the streets. James Baldwin, Hubert Selby, God, there were others. But anyways, I started seeing books that reminded me of what I knew, I know those streets. You mean you could write about those streets and it could be called literature? Wow. So, and then I became obsessed with social realism. You know, all these earnest, very detailed urban tales, which involved like a ton of suffering, or, you know, what are we going to eat? I don't know. The strike. So anyways, but I liked it because it kept painting pictures for me of a world that I could relate to. But I always thought social realism it had a little bit of, they were lecturing you. They were trying to convert you. They were trying to make a point. And I didn't want to do that, but it felt like chopping wood, you know, those sentences. And then when I read Hubert Selby, what he did, he hung out with, he was uneducated, basically. He wanted to be a writer, and he wound up, once he got out of the Navy, hanging out with beatniks in Greenwich Village. And he hung out with jazz musicians. And his style, even though it was covering the same streets of Brooklyn and wherever, his style had a jazz, had a bebop quality to it. It was a riff, you know, it wasn't like, and there she stood, the poor match girl. You know, it was like, and I found in that, the lyricism of that, for me, as a style, cut through the wooden facts of a social realist novel. And I wanted to marry what he saw, what the social realist saw, with his particular style, which he probably picked up, you know, from a jazz club. And that's when I felt like I could breathe when I write, as opposed to yeah, so I forgot the question.
Yes.
But anyways, that's how I found my style. Mm-hmm. And then even worse, I found a cabaret comic who was around the late 50s to the mid 60s named Lord Buckley. And he told stories of like Mahatma Gandhi or Jonah and the Whale or wherever, but he did it once again in this bebop, but it was a vocal delivery. And I fell in love with that. I mean, that's a little hard to, on a page, but those two, Lord Buckley and Hubert Selby, basically taught me how to write and like it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is all about your books, your novels, your projects, your thing. But then you have written a lot about for TV, for movies. How is your approach to that? Is just a means grab the money, or there's something rewarding of writing for television and movies? Is also rewarding, or it's just basically a means to have
Well, the difference
money?
is that you're a hired pen when you're writing for the movies, because the writer's not the boss. The writer's like being the vice president. The director's the boss. The editing room is the boss. The actors are the boss. The studio marketing is the boss. What you do, writing a screenplay, it's like, if you think of a film, you take a floodlight and it's on the ground, it's shining right up. And then you take all these filters that are different gels, different colors. And the first gel is blue, and you put it on it, and it's shining blue like this. That is the writer's gel. But then the director's gel is green. So the blue gets modified by the green. And then the actors come in, and their gel is purple. So the colors keep changing. By the time everybody piles on their gels, try to find the blue, you know. But for me, first it was exciting to be around like actors and directors, and my writing had gone down the toilet in the early 80s. I was a cocaine addict. I was broke. My books kept getting worse and worse. So I finally had offers because of the dialogue ear to write screenplays. So. And I was good at it, and it was successful. And so, but I was excited about all the things I felt bad about myself. All of a sudden, I felt great. But Hollywood's about, I'm going to plant 10 seeds in my garden, and each seed is a screenwriter writing a screenplay. Well, I'm only going to pick one flower, so it's a lottery, and has nothing to do with how good the writing is, because you can't put a page on a screen. It's like, there's so many factors beyond the writer's control, whether their script, no matter how good or bad it is, if it gets made into a movie. Sometimes the movie that's made is much better than this bad script. Sometimes the movie is terrible off this good script. It's out of your hands. And more often than not, they're not going to make it. They're going to pay you, but they're not going to make it. It's like, how many meals a day do you want? You want 3? Do another screenplay. And the irony is I was all flush with, screenplay poobah, and now it's gone. Every novel is like such a chunk out of my earning power because it takes so much time. Anybody who thinks they can make a living as a novelist ought to see a therapist. There's maybe 20-odd novelists in America who can live off their novel earnings, and most of them are stars, or either that or they have a following and they pump out a book every year, and they have fans that are waiting for the next book. But, if you take a couple of years between books, it's like, hello, remember me? No. Who are you again? No, you used to be somebody. Anyways, so I used to be thrilled that I was hanging out with all these people, but I used to be young. Now I'm just happy if they pay me. But the thing that saves me is that I think of myself as a novelist. If most screenwriters, I don't know how they don't, a lot of screenwriters aspire to be directors, not because they're gifted in making the whole film, because they can't bear just to be screenwriters. And they have to do something to elevate themselves, to deal with the humiliation. That's my jaded attitude. I remember that you said the first time you interviewed me 10 years ago, and I just had gotten off the phone to find out one of my scripts that everybody loved crashed and they're not going to make it. And it's probably going to look like I wanted to have his head for dinner. And now I know, because I was still raw. Now that's par for the course. I know that's going to happen. It's a deal with the devil, and I don't want to use the excuse, well, I've got mouths to feed, or I have kids to put through school. They went through school. I'm fed. My wife's fed, I'm gaining weight. But all I can say is I'm getting paid for the thing I love to do, which is writing, which is like, how many people get to do that, whether it's writing or another passion that's not practical? Mm-hmm. So I consider myself very lucky.
Let me ask one question about The Wire. Did The Wire, the level of risk, of freedom, made it the most rewarding screen project you have worked on? At least The Wire was important, was something meaningful, exciting?
Yeah, when The Wire came out, nobody had seen anything like it. And I knew David Simon from other passages in life. And when The Wire came on, I was a fan. I watched every episode for 2 seasons. And then he approached me and said, do you want to write for season 3? And I was intimidated because I think he thought, well, because I was so thorough about this world and clockers, that I knew so much more. But I gave everything I had. Nothing else was coming out. It was all in clockers. The well is dry. So I didn't want to fail, I was flattered that he asked, and I also felt like, oh man. But I killed myself and to do due diligence, and I got into it. And I'm proud to be part of the show. But it was an ensemble of writers. So sometimes, but the funny thing is, at that point I had written 8 novels. I had something like 6 feature films in the theaters over the years, and I had daughters who were 13, 14 years old. And they knew all this. And nobody watched The Wire for the first 2 seasons because there was no season DVD. But starting with season 3, you could watch the whole season on your DVR or VCR or DVD or whatever. And people did. They mainlined it because they didn't have to wait from week to week. Oh wait, who's Pooh Bunny again? Oh, he's not even in the next episode. How am I supposed to follow him to episode 3? And it was just too complicated and too long between. But when you can mainline it, 12 in a row, there was this thing called the Wire Flu, where on Monday people were calling in sick because they stayed up all Sunday night watching The Wire. I think I got a flu, boss. And it called. And once the Wire DVD came out, one day my kids came home because everybody in school was talking about it. Dad, I didn't know you were cool, But so, yeah, listen, I'm very proud to have been part of that. I think it's a big part of my legacy. Nobody feels sorry for the rich boy or the poor little, rich princess. So, I'm grateful for that. I enjoyed that. I like the people I worked with. But it gets in the way of getting, it sort of enhances and obstructs, my books.
Mm-hmm. We have to go finishing, but one last question. I have to ask also about politics. We have this huge elephant here in the room. This is Donald Trump, obviously, and I have to ask you.
Never heard of him.
No?
Who? Trump?
I must ask you.
Trump?
How are you coping with the craziness, and if you think there is anything writers can do to change or press politics?
Listen, I think writers. I feel like every crisis in history, in terms of writers, there's a certain writer that's best. World War I was known as the poets. A lot of great poets came out of World War I, writing about it. World War II was the novelists' war. There are a lot of great novels about World War II. Vietnam was the journalists' war because the technology was such that you were on the scene, you could transmit, and it was the journalists. Right now with Trump, I think it's a time for the journalists again, because journalism is about uncovering facts. Poetry and novels, they're too metaphorical. They're too soft. They don't give you, this is a time for hard facts. This is a time for uncovering bad people doing shitty things. And I could write a poem about it, but I wouldn't want to show it to anybody. I think it's a journalist's time. I don't, it's easy to say, but I don't live in America. I live in New York City. It's a totally different country. But in my neck of the woods, listen, out in the Midwest, they might be rooting Trump on it. I don't see anything wrong with what he's doing. Or, well, I wish he didn't say that stupid thing, but basically he's right. Where in New York City, I opened the front page of the New York Times, and it's like, get sledgehammer. Trump this, sledgehammer. Trump did this, sledgehammer, sledgehammer, sledgehammer. You go to the sports page, Trump. I remember when journalists became obsessed with crack. You would find crack on every page of a tabloid newspaper. Even the sports results. Well, in baseball, the New York Yankees crack. The Boston Red Sox, less crack. Now it's Trump instead of crack. And the New York front page of the New York Times has become like a horror movie. What to do about it? Vote. What we could do is vote. I'm not going to get on I'm not going to put on a pink pussy hat in March, but all you could do is vote. And for me, vote, hope that Congress turns to a Democratic majority this year that can block Trump's, what he's going to do as a president. But people get so numbed out because it's one thing after another. So the first 10 things, you're going crazy. By the 11th thing, it's like, oh, he's at it again. You know, by the 20th thing, it's like, he's exhausting. You know, because he once said, listen, I could murder somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. And he is murdering people on Fifth Avenue in a way and getting away with it. I mean, even this last thing, there was a video that was released from the White House that ended up with Obama and his wife in gorilla suits. And I mean, what is this Ku Klux Klan? And he goes, well, you know, I only saw the beginning of, it was really about Georgia voting fraud. I didn't even see the end. I heard about it. I didn't do it. And anybody else in history who would do something like that, unless you were from the deep South in lynching days, you're done. You're finished. He just, impunity, outrage. What else can I do? What other monkey wrench can I throw into people's sense of normalcy? Okay, you have the ICE agents. Well, you know, listen, we got a 5-year-old kid, and he says, well, you know, people got killed. All right, well, maybe we'll pull back on that, but let's go over here and do something. The whole point is create chaos because you can. I know he told somebody, I have a friend whose friend became the Treasury Secretary, and it was the guy who lost out to become the Treasury Secretary. And this guy who applied to the job was telling Trump, well, my policy is this, this, and this. And Trump said, I don't give a fuck what your policy is. All you need to know is one thing. They tried to kill me, and they failed. I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. End of story. And the other guy probably cheered and got the job. But the guy who got the job, he said, I'll do anything. I'll live in your ass, Mr. Trump. I'll bring up furniture. And, you know, can I get a microwave up there? You know, and the minute he got the job, Trump calls him thinking like he's got his lackey. And he says, sir, I don't think it's appropriate that we have any contact as long as I'm in this job. And Trump went bananas and is trying to get rid of this guy for 4 years. You know, the guy just knew the way to do it. You know, lick his ego, get the job, telling him to fuck off. But we all can't do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean.
Yes.
No, I'm not sorry.
Okay, Richard, I think we have to finish. They told me that you're going to sign books, no?
Yeah.
You're going to sign books.
Well, I'm going to sign him Donald Trump.
Yeah.
No, I've got his whole signature down.
Okay. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for being here in Barcelona.
Thank you for
very
coming.
much. Thank you.